What are we talking about?
Well, what I wanted to talk to you about before the show, and then I was heartbroken. You ripped my heart out while I was still beating.
Oh.
Because I've been rewatching the Blade movies.
Here it comes.
And then I found out that you've never seen a Blade movie.
Oh, my God.
And I thought, how is that possible?
I'm just not a huge Blade guy.
Are you not a Wesley Snipes fan?
I'm a Wesley Snipes fan. I liked. I'll be honest. My favorite Wesley Snipes role ever is Simon Phoenix.
Oh yeah, dude. He
chews the scenery. He's having so much fun. You can tell.
If you like that performance, you'll like Blade. But here's the thing about Blade though, it has Wesley Snipes' personality, but it's much more controlled.
Do you have any of them?
No, but
my Wi-Fi's out at home. Otherwise, I'd go home and watch them right now. And I don't have Netflix.
Oh, I'm just saying they're all on Netflix.
Netflix is the one streaming service that I refuse to have.
Why?
Because as soon as a show gets really good, instead of
they just cancel it.
Yeah, so fuck you, Netflix. Eat a dick.
Well, you can
unless you're Karate Kid. Oh. Which, by the way, is a great show.
I'll break your heart. I've never watched a single friggin' episode of Cobra Kai.
That's
Not
okay.
One.
That's okay, because you know what? Karate Kid didn't come out when you were 9. It did when I was 9.
You're right. You might be onto something. I think it's a generational thing because
Karate Kid was a big part of my childhood.
I will
huge.
Say,
I bought the novelization of Karate Kid Part 2.
I love my dad. Rest in peace. But he had some character flaws as a father, mostly letting me watch Blade at a young age. Because Blade 1 came out in 98.
Yeah. When you were 4?
6. Or would have been, I was 5. Would have been, yeah, God, math is fucked up. I would have been 5. But I only say maybe 6 because I
think I tried cocaine before you were potty trained.
Because
I'm pretty sure.
I don't remember when.
You were born in 93?
But I don't think I actually watched Blade when it came out. I watched it later, I'm pretty sure, because I watched it like right around the time that Blade 2 was coming out.
Probably 2001,
but
maybe?
I think it is a generational thing. Yeah. No, because Blade 1 came out in 98, and then, Blade 2 came out in 2002. Which I might hold off on doing a review on that no, I'm already past the date. Because I was going to do it because it's 20 years old. It just turned 20. And I think we already passed the date because I think it came out in like March.
We need to look up like some movie anniversaries coming up so we can
Spider-Man,
make sure.
Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, May 1st. No, I think May 1st, 2002. So that
weren't we going to rewatch all of them?
God, do you think you have time to watch 8 fucking movies? I have a kid now, dude. I don't have that kind of time. Not anymore. But anyway, no, that was. I think you are absolutely onto something because Blade was such a cool, hot property when I was younger, and especially when Blade 2 came out, like that was a huge deal.
Here's what I know about Blade. I do know that it is an incredibly beloved franchise, and that there were people who were like, when they heard Blade was coming back, they were like, "Bring back Wesley Snipes."
And I'm one of those people that. Mahershala Ali is going to be great because he's great and everything.
He's fucking awesome.
But I am someone who really wishes that...
he's going to have a cameo in the movie.
And look, Wesley Snipes was a class act about it on Twitter. He's like, he'll do great. I'm excited for what he's going to do. And I respect him for that. But
because he knows he's probably too old to do it now.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't work him in, not as Blade, but like have him be like some sort of character. Yeah. Maybe they make him like an older Wesley Snipes is his Whistler. That would be a really cool idea.
That would be fucking awesome.
Free idea, Marvel.
We'll take $10,000.
No,
in crypto.
It has to be a grizzled old white man to be Whistler. That's it.
Oh, sure.
And that's the thing too. I love those Blade movies. I don't know how accurate they are to the comics because I've never read one Blade.
See, he's
comic
not
book.
even that big of a. He's kind of a big deal now because he's a member of the Avengers, but he's not real. I mean, he's basically in the comics right now. The vampires have their own nation, and Blade's job is to make sure that nobody gets out and nobody gets in. So he's not even in the Avengers. He's a member of the Avengers, but he's
May 3rd,
okay,
2022.
But he's kind of a reserve member. And he's never been that big of a presence in the comics.
And that's
never.
That's what's so
really.
I think that's what makes those movies so special. And Blade Trinity isn't great. I'll be honest. It's kind of but that's what makes those movies so special is because they were the first to really go out there and do something that Morbius should have done. And they took a character that not a lot of people know, and they got a fucking movie star like Wesley Snipes to get on board, and they kind of just carved out their own path because nobody was doing it. Nobody cared about, especially, and this is also the time where Marvel, because I can't remember, I don't know who owned the license. I want to say, it's gonna drive me nuts. New Line had the license.
Yeah.
This is at the time where Marvel was bankrupt in the 90s, so they were selling off their property. So New Line Cinema picks up Blade. This is the
New
production.
Line Cinema actually bought Marvel at one point back in the 90s.
And this is the company that made the Friday the 13th movies. They made the
they also made
Nightmare on Elm Street. So they're like, ooh, we can really keep tapping into that horror market and do a more of like this vampire action movie. And I rewatched. I fell asleep watching the first one because it was late at night. It was in between taking care of the baby. But man, dude, I rewatched that first movie, and it's so good, and it's so amazing to me that movie came out in '98, and it worked. Like, are there moments? And you know what? It's fine that I fell asleep because I've seen that movie a million fucking times. But there are moments where it's like, okay, this movie was made in the 90s. There are some moments that are like, meh, but they're really not that much in that first movie. Like, it is a very subdued, grounded comic book movie that you don't really see anymore. And again, where Sony falters with Morbius, and I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to fuck up Craven because they can't do anything right. I don't understand how after those first two Raimi Spider-Man movies, they just continue to take a gun and shoot off all their fucking toes on their feet.
This isn't
they
shooting
can't
yourself
get it right.
in the foot. This is taking a fully automatic weapon and aiming it at your toes, Sony.
Why are they so determined to make a Sinister Six movie? We don't fucking care. We don't. You had a Sinister Six movie this past year. What would have... That is going to be... No Way Home is better than any Sinister Six movie you can come up with. So just accept that and stop trying to... Why is the Spider-Man studio, and I've said this multiple times in this pod, why is the Spider-Man studio so against having Spider-Man in its movies? I just don't... And I get that they don't want to confuse audiences, but you've introduced the multiverse now.
Also, audiences are way smarter than you think.
Yes.
Probably smarter than most of your fucking executives, assholes.
Did any review of the Batman thing, as long as you get out in front of it and explain, this isn't canon, it's its own thing, was there anybody that watched the Batman being like, man, I was really confused.
No.
Where was Superman and Wonder Woman?
Where's
No!
Christian Bale?
If you say this is Andrew, we're going back to the Andrew Garfield timeline, or we're going back to the Sam Raimi timeline, and this is what we're telling, people would understand that. And that's what kills me is like in '98, they knew to make Blade work, you have to get a solid actor that cares, and you have to get a pretty good script. And that's what's so frustrating about Morbius.
So many actors and directors and producers and writers right now who are, forces in the industry, who are kind of, middle-aged, 20s to 40s and whatnot, kind of, running things. A lot of these people grew up with comic books. And these are extremely talented people who make great content regardless of what it is. And because they love the source material, Feige is just a master at making sure that he taps into that childhood, whatever it was, like, hey, guess what? I want to get you to, direct this movie. I want to get you to star in this movie. There's actors that are campaigning to be in the MCU. That's insane. Around the time of Blade?
Well, Mahershala Ali.
Around the time of Blade, people were like, are you sure you want to do a fucking comic book movie, Wesley? Now, people like Mahershala Ali are like, I want to be Blade.
You fall into it.
Yes.
I was watching.
Things are so much different now, and because of the quality of the content that's been put out.
I was watching a thing on Netflix. It was called Attack of the Hollywood Cliches, and it kind of just broke down all the cliches that are in movies. Yeah. Particularly American movies.
Yeah.
And they did make Rob Lowe hosted it, and there was a joke that I did get a good laugh at, where he said, like, even though that the MCU is like 65% of Hollywood now, like it really has just kind of taken over.
4 of the top 10 top 10 grossing movies of all time are superhero movies.
But the reason I've been talking about Blade and talking about these movies, and it does go back to Morbius, because there's so much that I see in Blade that I was like, if you could have done. And this is the problem too. I think we also live in a time where a Morbius movie doesn't work because we're also in its era of superhero movies. Where we don't. A lot of the audience knows who Morbius is and knows he's not that. They tried so hard to make him this ultra compelling character, and he's really not.
No,
he's really not.
Hey, I would like to put this forth that there would never ever be a time that is ripe for a Morbius movie.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be honest. The guy came out with. I told you about this, and I've talked about it on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
In the summer in the '90s, they had every year for like 3 or 4 years. We've talked about this. The Danny Ketch Ghost Rider, the Darkhawk, the Guardians of the Galaxy,
Darkhawk had
New Warriors,
an amazing costume.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I told you what they've done with him lately, which is have a guy who has MS writing Darkhawk who has MS as well. The character, and it's really inclusivity. It's awesome. And it's a good story too. Here's the other thing too. Quick aside about inclusivity. If it was just really shitty stories by people who wanted to be to promote inclusivity, that's sure, I get you. But they're really compelling stories that happen to add to the inclusivity of these stories, and that's awesome, right? And that's just right there.
Mm-hmm.
But they used to come out with these series, and every year they would come out with like 5, and inevitably by the end of the year, 2 are going well, and the other 3 have been canceled. And Morbius was one of those. They tried to set up this Midnight Suns, and they actually had a comic book called Midnight Suns one of those years, and they tried to make a Morbius comic book, and it's like, why? Nobody fucking cares. Nobody cares. Morbius is at best a C-list Spider-Man supporting character at best. If he is involved directly in any sort of storyline, it better be as Peter Parker's science buddy. He shouldn't be involved in like the action, or because who cares? When we saw the previews for Morbius, I wonder what else I can do. Nobody fucking cares what you can do, because it's just crap powers that you just shoved into a vampire-looking dude. Whatever, man. You know what most people remember Morbius for? Those horrifying palm hands in the cartoon.
Yeah,
that's what they remember.
Yeah.
That's more horrifying than actually sucking blood.
But and again, it goes back to, like I was, what works so well for me watching these Blade movies, and it does work being in the time it is, being in the late 90s, being in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And being a very obscure character. Like,
yes.
He was big in the 70s. He had the whole, which is great, hilarious, because in the third movie, he does fight Dracula, and that was like one of his things in the comics was he fights Dracula.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find it. I think there was something floating around that Morbius was originally.
Oh, I thought you were just being a dick being on your phone while I was talking.
No. I'm pretty sure that there was a rumor that Morbius was supposed to be in the first Blade movie.
Oh.
But
back in the day?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't know either. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when Blade came out, that was a big deal.
Okay.
Because it was a comic book movie. I just never got around to it.
Well, we're talking about Morbius.
Yes.
I'm trying to find it here, so towards the end. But Morbius was originally, there is a deleted scene where Morbius shows up at the end of Blade directly to tease a sequel in which he would be a central figure before he would even been Spider-Man on the big screen. Now, that would have been fucking cool. I would have loved that. But, and again, tying it back to why I love Blade so much and why Blade has been so revered by, and look, they're not perfect movies.
No.
There's some shit in them that I'm like, I scoff at, because they're still trying to, and everybody credits X-Men and Spider-Man. I say give it up to Blade, because Blade was the first huge, and this, by the way, rated R comic book movie that was a humongous hit, and that's what really started the wave of the Marvel movies.
A lot of the
trend.
current owes it to Blade for sure.
Yeah, and what's funny, I was reading when I was trying to find the Morbius scene, I did find out that Wesley Snipes is actually trying to do a Black Panther movie. He was interested in doing a Black Panther movie, but then he was approached about Blade and took a lot of interest in that character, and then did that. But so yeah, I remember watching the first movie. It really, and this is why I love movies so much, and I love talking about movies, because it did transport me to being a kid again. And I did have those feelings of being a kid because Ashley never really was into Blade. She said she's never seen the second movie. We watched a good portion of it last night, and she's like, Jesus. Because the second movie, it's actually what's funny about them is David S. Goyer wrote all 3 movies, but the second movie is such a departure from the first movie, and it still manages to work because Guillermo del Toro directs it.
Oh, wow.
And
I have to see that now.
If you like...
I didn't know Del Toro did one of them.
Yeah, he did the second one.
Holy shit. Yeah, I got to see that.
And if you like creature features and like because Guillermo del Toro made a monster movie with Blade in it.
Del Toro's basically just the greatest.
Yeah.
I'll watch anything. Have you seen Nightmare Alley? We'll talk about
I'm
that
not.
another time.
I'm not.
Go ahead.
I'll never see that fucking movie. The reason I love Blade 2 so much is, like I said, it is unabashedly a horror action movie. Like Del Toro adds a lot of tension, and I remember when I was younger, I'd watch the like DVD stuff, and he said that like when they were talking to him about doing it, he goes, "I want you to know I've seen the first Blade. I really liked it because that first Blade is much more of like straight up an action movie with some horror elements because they're vampires, but like this second movie is very much." You can see Del Toro's fingerprints all over it. You can see the spookiness to it, and he really played because in this movie, the vampires team up with Blade because vampires are being killed. Also, David S. Goyer in this universe, vampirism is a virus. So when you get bitten and you become a vampire, yeah, it's like a virus. Yes, you're like immortal, but you still can't use garlic, silver. And daylight still messes you. But, like, crosses don't scare you because he made a good point in one of the interviews. He's like, the reason I did that is, like, would a Jewish vampire be, like, taken down by a cross? Like, he felt like the cross was a weird myth to do it. And that goes back to them being, like, hellspawn or whatever. But it is much more, even then, it was much more modern idea of it being, like, a parasite and being a virus. And so
a bloodborne pathogen.
Well, and that's how they have pure blood vampires in this. So there's people that are born a vampire. So they're not saying that they're undead. They're immortal, but they're not like undead where they can actually have vampire babies and whatnot.
That's fucking weird.
What? That there's pure blood vampires?
No, that there's vampire babies.
Well, I hope you're ready for Blade 2 because there's vampire fetuses. Like,
I thought you were talking about Blade 2.
That is, I am. I'm saying that there's vampire fetuses in it because one of the main things in the movie is they want to take Blade's blood because he's a daywalker.
He's the
daywalker. So they want to take his blood and inject it into the vampire baby fetuses, so they make a whole new breed of vampire that can be in sunlight.
Gross.
In the process, in the second movie, the monsters, the Reapers as they call them, they are a mutation of the vampire virus, so they feed on vampires and humans, but their hunger is worse than vampires. They have to feed daily, whereas a regular vampire, they could go a couple days. These things need to feed every day, and it's like they're like... the movie's a little problematic because it calls them crackheads, but that's what they are. They're junkies essentially. Is what they're trying to. I think what they're getting for. It's early 2000s. This is what it is. But the character. I'll just spoil it because I don't think you're ever gonna watch it. But there's
I might.
How they feed. The reveal is so cool.
Okay, well, why don't you not tell me? Because I do want to watch Blade 2.
It goes like, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Leave it alone.
I love it. Who fucking cares? The movie's 20 years old. Anyway, sorry that Blade I'm gonna have a whale of a time chopping that up for you too.
Look, just to let you know, one of us recently had a baby, so occasionally topics are gonna get derailed while we're talking about baby and upbringing and stuff. That's the way it is.